Mr. Speaker, we're now in the fourth day of this emergency sitting. And it's even more apparent that the NDP government has created this emergency because it can't manage either the province or itself. The NDP government has created this crisis in the first place by overspending their expenditure budgets for the last 13 years. And they continued to overspend last year by $130 million. Given the financial crisis that caused the need to force the projected PST increase, the proposed one, I asked the Minister of Finance, will he this year commit to reducing this year's core government expenditures to or below his budget of $12,068,888,003?
Mr. Speaker, the commitment of the government is to protect things that matter for Manitobans: core services and health care, education investments, services to children and families, strategic investments in infrastructure, to do it while retaining one of the lowest per capita costs for government services in the country, and to do it while retaining the affordability advantage that is so important to the quality of life in Manitoba. It's a balanced approach, Mr. Speaker, that wants to protect families from floods, ensure children get education, seniors get health care, and that people are working and have opportunities to have a future in this province, which is part of our skills agenda. That's the commitment we make to Manitobans, Mr. Speaker.
Mr. Speaker, speaking of emergencies, in 2003, the NDP government said that they would have Lake Winnipeg well on its way to being cleaned up in 2 to 3 years. Instead, 10 years later, we've an emergency on Lake Winnipeg because it's deteriorated and is now the most threatened lake on the planet. For 13 years and 9 months, the government's position has focused on extensive drainage, taking water off the land, and this extensive drainage has occurred. I was pleased to hear this morning at the Keeping Water on the Land conference that the government is going to change direction and implement a no net loss of wetlands policy.
Right.
I asked the Premier, when will the no net loss of wetlands policy be implemented?
Mr. Speaker, for several years now, we've had a riparian tax credit in place which protects those forests along the edges of waterways, provides support to farmers that take them out of productive use and gives them an income with respect to that. We've had alternative land use planning, which provide demonstrations which provide support to producers to protect the landscape. We've worked closely with Ducks Unlimited and the International Institute for Sustainable Development with respect to cattails projects. And yes, Mr. Speaker, there is more that can be done to retain water on the land, which is why we've supported the Nature Conservancy in taking land and putting it aside for the productive use of restoring the soil, keeping the water on the land, providing the native vegetation that's down there. These are all many things that we've done in the past, and we'll find ways to do even more in the future to protect Lake Winnipeg, Mr. Speaker.
Mr. Speaker, the Minister of Conservation and Water Stewardship this morning emphasized that his focus was going to be on the Red River Valley. Now, efforts on the Red River Valley are certainly needed, but the large flood emergency in 2011 occurred primarily along the Assiniboine River. And it was emphasized after the minister left the conference that urgent and major attention to the Assiniboine River Basin is needed to decrease the likelihood and extent of future flood emergencies on the Assiniboine River, Lake Manitoba, and Lake Winnipeg, and Lake St. Martin. I asked the Minister of Conservation and Water Stewardship, what specific actions will he take to ensure that the Assiniboine River Basin gets the urgent attention that it needs?
Speaker, this is one of the major reasons we're bringing forward the 10-year building and renewal program in Manitoba, because we do, and the member from River Heights is correct, we do have to invest in an infrastructure that will protect the people from Brandon all the way through the Assiniboine Valley, from Portage la Prairie to Winnipeg, up through Lake Manitoba and Lake St. Martin. We need to invest in the kind of infrastructure that will allow them the same safety that we've provided to the city of Winnipeg and the people in the Red River Valley. And that will include looking how we can retain water on the land and not have it run off too rapidly to exacerbate flooding conditions. That is part of the strategy, as is the channel on Lake St. Martin, as is a new channel out of Lake Manitoba into Lake St. Martin, as is strengthening the dike system all along the Assiniboine River, Mr. Speaker, which will keep water in the river, but also out of the river, Mr. Speaker.